Your brain is an incredibly energy-demanding organ. It's a powerhouse of energy consumption, with each unit of brain tissue requiring nearly 25 times more energy than an equivalent unit of muscle tissue. Weighing at just about 2% of your body mass, your brain is a true when it comes to energy usage, commanding a staggering 20% of your body's total energy expenditure. In comparison, the chimp's brain consumes about 8 to 9% of energy. Your brain's energy is supplied with glucose. Unlike other organs that can switch to alternative energy sources, such as muscles using fatty acids, your brain heavily relies on glucose for its normal functioning. Glucose is a type of sugar that is derived from the carbohydrates we consume in our diet. Glucose is readily available in the bloodstream, and the blood-brain barrier allows glucose to be transported into the brain cells, serving as the main energy substrate for brain cells and providing the necessary fuel for various cognitive processes and maintaining neuronal activity. Prolonged periods without food intake, such as during fasting or starvation, can lead to low glucose levels in your body. When glucose is low, brain cells may not have enough energy to function optimally, leading to impaired cognitive processes such as memory, attention, and problem solving. In addition to glucose, your brain requires a constant supply of oxygen to support energy production. Oxygen is essential for the brain's metabolic processes, particularly in the mitochondria, where glucose is metabolized to generate adenosine triphosphate, also known as ATP, which is the primary energy currency of cells. What is the energy used for? Neurons communicate through electrical impulses and chemical signals, and those processes require energy. Synaptic activity, the release and uptake of neurotransmitters, also contribute to the brain's energy expenditure to support those signaling processes that allow your brain to send and receive information, coordinate different brain regions, and perform complex tasks like thinking, sensing, and moving. Your brain requires a significant amount of energy, which is equivalent to the energy expended by a human leg muscle running a marathon. The brain, being the powerhouse of your body, requires a constant and abundant supply of energy to perform its incredible functions. To meet this energy demand, your brain receives a rich blood supply through a complex network of cerebral circulation. Those blood vessels are no ordinary pathways. They are highly specialized to ensure an uninterrupted flow of oxygen and nutrients to brain cells while efficiently removing waste products. This is why your brain receives about 15 to 20% of the cardiac output, which is the volume of the blood pumped by the heart per minute. To put this into perspective, consider that the brain weighs about 3 pounds on average in adults. Despite this relatively small size, it receives approximately 750 to 1,000 millimeters of blood per minute. The brain's exceptional blood supply highlights its critical importance and the continuous demand for oxygen and nutrients to support its complex functions. The high blood flow to the brain ensures the delivery of essential resources required for optimal brain function. After about 5 minutes without a blood supply, the neurons and glial cells that make up the brain's intricate network begin to deteriorate, resulting in irreversible brain damage. If blood flow is not restored promptly, it can lead to brain death. The brain's energy consumption varies depending on its activity level. It's more like a dimmer switch that adjusts to the task at hand. More complex tasks crank up the energy usage as neurons fire off electrical impulses and release chemical signals. But even when your brain is at rest or not engaged in specific tasks, it still consumes a considerable amount of energy. This baseline energy consumption, known as the brain's resting metabolic rate, supports essential functions like maintaining cell integrity, protein synthesis, and ion balance. As your brain is energy hungry, it operates on the principle of minimizing energy expenditure. This leads to efficient and rapid decision making, often through mental shortcuts, also known as heuristics. For example, we might make decisions based on past experiences or simplified models of reality rather than analyzing all the information in depth each time we make decisions. When deciding on a restaurant, instead of researching all available options, which would be energy consuming, you might choose to go to a place you've enjoyed before or pick a restaurant based on a friend's recommendation. This mental shortcut reduces cognitive load and energy consumption. Your brain also tends to prefer familiar situations and routines because they consume less energy. Novel situations or choices require more energy for processing, which the brain naturally tends to avoid. This is why people tend to resist change. The brain's high energy demand can influence our decisions and make us lean more towards status quo and familiar options, even if they are not the most beneficial. When we encounter a familiar face, our brain does not need to work as hard to process the information because that familiar face is already installed in our memory. Recognizing your friend's face is relatively effortless because your brain has seen it many times before and therefore does not need to expend much energy to identify it. However, when we see a face that is not only unfamiliar but also belongs to a different racial group, our brain has to work harder for a few reasons. First, we don't have a detailed cognitive template for faces we don't frequently encounter, meaning the brain has to use more energy to process and remember them. This phenomenon is part of the basis for the other race effect, where people are typically better at recognizing faces from their own racial group compared to faces from different racial groups. Second, when we encounter someone from a different racial group, especially if such encounters are rare in our daily life, the brain recognizes this as something novel or out of the ordinary. This novelty causes our brain to become more alert as it tries to gather as much information as possible. It's a little bit like an automatic safety feature. Your brain trying to understand if this unfamiliar person represents any kind of threat. So, recognizing a familiar face is like following a well-trodden path. It's easier and requires less energy. In contrast, identifying an unfamiliar face, especially from a different racial group, is like exploring a new trail. Our brain becomes more alert and has to work harder, spending more energy to process the new information. The high energy demand of your brain have driven it to become an effective predictor of events. This predictive ability, based on previous experience, helps to streamline cognitive processes and conserve energy, which in turn contributes to more efficient decision making. By predicting future events based on past experiences, your brain can conserve energy by preparing for expected outcomes. It's more efficient for your brain to anticipate what will happen next and plan a response ahead of time rather than waiting for events to occur and then react. Imagine you're walking alone in a parking lot. Recently, there has been media coverage of crimes occurring in similar settings. Your brain uses this information along with the contextual cues, such as being alone in a parking lot, possibly at night, to predict potential danger. This prediction is not just a vague sense of unease, but a specific anticipation of threats like theft or assault based on the recent news you've heard. Your brain's prediction prompts a series of precautions. You might quicken your pace, check over your shoulder more frequently, keep your keys ready in your hand, or even call someone to stay on the line with you as you walk to your car. Those actions are your brain's way of preparing and responding to the anticipated threat, thereby conserving the energy that would be required for an abrupt reaction to an unexpected event. In this scenario, the brain's predictive ability helps you navigate potential threats in an energy-efficient manner. It uses the available information to anticipate risks and formulate appropriate responses ahead of time, conserving energy and increasing the chance of a safer outcome. Moreover, if you safely navigate similar situations multiple times, your brain updates its predictions about the risk level in those contexts, which in turn influences your future behavior. However, your brain remains alert and ready to adjust its prediction if the circumstances change, such as hearing about footsteps behind you. In social situations, your brain also uses predictions to conserve energy. If you are meeting a close friend you know well, your brain can anticipate, to a degree, their reactions or responses based on past interactions. This prediction helps streamline the conversation and avoid potential conflicts, again, saving energy. Take trust as an example. Trust is essentially a belief or prediction that someone else will act in a certain way, typically to our benefit or at least without causing us harm. We establish trust based on previous experiences, behavioral patterns, and cues, which our brain uses to form a mental model of how trustworthy a person is. If people have consistently been reliable in the past, your brain uses that information to predict they'll likely be reliable in the future. This expectation allows you to interact with them more efficiently. You can make plans based on the assumption of their reliability, which saves you the cognitive energy of constantly questioning or verifying their actions. In contrast, with someone new or someone who has proven to be untrustworthy in the past, your brain has to expend more energy in the interaction. You might constantly assess their words and actions, searching for clues of trustworthiness. This vigilance and uncertainty requires more cognitive resources and can be mentally draining. Over time, as your brain gathers more data about a person's behavior, your brain refines its prediction model of their trustworthiness. This evolving model allows for efficient interactions, which are less energy consuming than interactions filled with uncertainty and constant reassessment. It's an elegant solution to the complex problem of predicting others' behavior, reducing cognitive load and allowing us to focus our mental resources where they are mostly needed. High energy demand can also push the brain to rely on more emotional rather than rational processing. In high stress situations, such as during an emergency, people often rely on their instincts or gut feelings rather than calm, rational thought. This is because emotion-based processing typically requires less energy. For example, if a fire alarm goes off, your immediate response would be to leave the building, driven by fear and the urge to survive, rather than logically analyzing the situation. Why do people tend to pay more attention to negative experiences over neutral or positive ones? Given the brain's high energy demand and its need to allocate resources efficiently, it makes sense to focus on negative emotions that might signify an immediate threat. This focus ensures that any potential danger is addressed promptly, ultimately serving to protect us. Negative emotions like fear, anger, or sadness typically signify a problem or potential danger. For our ancestors, quickly noticing and responding to negative experiences could mean the differences between life and death. Therefore, our brains are wired to pay more attention to these negative emotions. They serve as urgent alerts that require immediate attention and often prompt us to act in ways that mitigate the perceived threat. Let's use the previous example of walking alone in the parking lot after hearing news of recent crimes. Your brain anticipates potential danger, which might trigger fear or anxiety. There are negative emotions that immediately capture your attention. This heightened attention to negative emotions leads you to take precautions like walking faster, staying alert to your surroundings, or having your keys ready. On the other hand, positive emotions, while essential for overall well being and social bonding, do not typically demand an urgent response. They signal safety and satisfaction, which, while crucial, do not require immediate action for survival. Your brain's high energy demand means that extended periods of cognitive exertion can lead to decision fatigue. After making numerous decisions or engaging in complex problem solving, your brain's energy reserves deplete, which can affect the quality of subsequent decisions. Imagine a day filled with critical decision making, perhaps related to work or personal issues. By the end of the day, you might find yourself opting for taking out instead of cooking a healthy meal at home, or mindlessly scrolling through social media rather than reading a book. Those choices can be attributed to decision fatigue, which is a result of your brain's depleted energy reserves. Your brain, the incredible organ, is always hungry for energy, and this hunger shapes how you think and make decisions. It's constantly predicting what's coming next, saving energy, and keeping you one step ahead. This energy saving trick extends into your social lives too, helping you decide who to trust and who to steer clear of. Why does bad news seems to trick more than the good? That's your energy efficient brain, again, focusing on potential threats to keep you safe. So next time you are making a decision, big or small, remember it's your energy demanding brain working behind the scenes, making sure you are ready for whatever comes next. And that's a wrap on how your brain's high energy demand influences your decision making. Stay tuned for more insights into the inner workings of your brain and its impact on your decision making. Until next time, keep those neurons firing and make the most of your incredible brain.